And we are live.
What number is it, Mike?
Welcome to episode 294
So close.
of An American Werewolf. I am Michael Martin, the American Werewolf, and I'm wondering, did someone just call me Coltrane? In the house tonight, we've got William Tenenbaum, also a brilliant genius. He lives at 112 Archer, don't you? Just across the street there. And joining us after quite a hiatus, I can't even remember the last one you were on. It might have been a Kurosawa film. We've got Tony DiGirolamo, who's author of The Pineys. What's happening, everybody? Thank you for joining me for this film.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, always. So I was saying just before we went on that I was not a fan of Rushmore. But the first Wes Anderson film that I saw was the one we're about to discuss. And I had never seen anything like it. And it was beautiful, and it was sad, and it was hysterical. And it sort of expanded my parameters in terms of what I understood was possible in filmmaking.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. And I'm talking about Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums. So if you guys are ready to go, shall we get it going?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Boogie woogie. So if you can't cover some Thin Lizzy, what can you do? So the story is partly inspired by Wes Anderson's own parents' divorce, though he noted on the DVD commentary that the final film diverged significantly from his personal experiences. It also drew influences from J.D. Salinger's stories and Orson Welles films. Wes Anderson and Owen Wilson co-wrote the screenplay, their third collaboration after Bottle Rocket and Rushmore, earning an Academy Award nomination for Best Original Screenplay. Gene Hackman was hesitant to take the role of Royal Tenenbaum, feeling the character's insensitivity mirrored aspects of his own past family life. He consulted his family, who encouraged him to accept it. Hackman reportedly objected to the relatively low salary, but committed fully once on board. He stayed on set all day, even observing scenes that didn't involve him. Let's start out with, I was going to start with Tony, but I think he's got St. Joan there giving him. Let's start with Tony. Initial thoughts about the film.
Well, I liked it because it was about a family. And the family dynamic, the extended family dynamic, has always been fascinating to me because when you have family characters, they have a long history with each other, and you can play on that. And that's what I think Anderson did in this film. He kept playing on their long history together, and that's very gratifying. I hate it when you're watching a movie and none of the characters know each other, and you have to hear all this exposition about who they are and what's going on and who their wives are and whatever. I like it when it's a lot of assumed knowledge.
Okay, all right, that works. William Tenenbaum, what do you got for us? What did you think?
Well, I saw this movie in the theaters. After seeing Rushmore in the theaters, I was an immediate Wes Anderson fan. And this film was great, like all of them. It expands on the stuff that he was doing in Rushmore, but does it a little bit more detail-oriented. I love the art direction, but all of his movies, I just love his art direction. The thing that bothered me when I saw this one in the theaters was how long it is and how convoluted it is, because it went from a story about one kid and his, rich older friend to this family dynamic where there were so many people and so many stories intertwined that it just sort of got a little bit lost. Like Wes Anderson got a little over his skis on the plot, even though it worked and it comes together really well. It still was a little convoluted for me.
So you thought that the story was more about Owen Wilson?
No, the story was about Royal Tenenbaums.
Royal, okay.
But then, of course, it takes so many different turns. It's also about Luke Wilson and and Margot, and it's also about Bill Murray, and it's also about the wife and her new husband, and it's also about Ben Stiller and his kids, and it's also about Owen Wilson trying to become part of this family, and it's also about there's so many moving parts that you kind of lose that cohesiveness, where I thought Rushmore was a nice tight story and worked, where this one you kind of lose the focus on the fact that it's about this guy trying to get his family back.
I don't think people realize that there's only a difference, or maybe you do, or maybe, not you, but I mean, just people in general. There's only a difference of about 15 minutes between this and Rushmore. It's only 15 additional minutes, and I think he was able to put in so much more that was easy to understand. I think that if it's about a man trying to get his family back, then, why did he lose his family? And just, these people that are, it's like what we were talking about last week when we were talking about Del Toro, with the heartbreak and the loss and the pathos, and, you're longing for these things that, you never really had. And they're all of the characters in here are just sort of scrambling, and they're just in survival mode in one form or another. And I thought it was complex, and I thought it was beautiful, and I loved it. It's my favorite Wes Anderson film. And I think, I don't know if it's his best, but I got to give top marks to Gene Hackman. Because he is ultimately, in the end, the main character of Royal Tenenbaum. And he's broken his family, or at least he put them on the path to brokenness.
Yep.
Not in the way that makes him like an evil person. He's not an evil guy. He's not a. What is it? How would each of you describe Royal?
Extreme lack of self-awareness, like a guy who just doesn't give a shit what he says, but doesn't realize the things that he says are deeply, deeply hurtful, but doesn't realize, so he's innocent in that, but he's also, very selfish guy.
I think one of the reasons Royal is relatable is because he has a family, and it's a big family, and he's overwhelmed by it. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Like a lot of men can relate to that. They have families, they have all this responsibility, they're trying to keep it all together and trying to keep things in the family running, and they don't have time for any of the smaller things. Like that's not really his job. He can't be expected to to also keep the family going, keep all the money coming in or whatever, and make sure everybody's having a good time and not, getting psychologically scarred. So I think that portion of it was very relatable to me. I could see that, like you said, he's not really intending to hurt anybody. That some people get hurt is, on the one hand, unfortunate, but on the other hand, it's not his fault. And I think it's, in some respects, the family puts way too much on him. They put way too much on him, and it sort of ends up falling apart, not really because of him, but because of the expectations of everyone around him.
I could see that there might be a bit of a pile-on. I mean, he's clearly just like almost in an absent-minded way, insensitive, like Bill was saying.
Yeah.
Like when he's sitting there at the table and he's telling his kids, that they're getting divorced. Because I just watched this last night. And like most of my favorite films, I don't watch them very often because I never want to get, tired of them or find out that, I'm in the middle of watching one of my favorite films and then I'm staring at my phone, so I'm like, oh shit, I like to keep it, keep some distance in between my viewings. But the one kid goes, is it our fault? And he goes, God, no. He goes, but then he goes, obviously, we made some sacrifices. We made some sacrifices as a result of having children, but God, no. And he's such a jerk.
Yep.
He's just kind of self-centered. And, I'm not a parent, but I know a lot of parents. I know a lot of husbands. I know a lot of fathers, and you know what they do? They go to work, they go home, and they stay in the house, every fucking day. And I talk to them, I'm like, how the fuck do you, I talk to them sometimes, we having some beers, and I'm just like, how the fuck do you do that every day without like going crazy? And that's just not the type of dad that Royal Tenenbaum is. He wants to go to the dog races. He wants to do this and he wants to do that. And it's almost like his family's not the top priority. I won't say like a secondary consideration, but Royal and his interests are of equal consideration to everyone else, which is not the typical route that I guess the superstar dad takes.
It's classic sort of philanderer, boomer kind of character that you see. Like
I love him.
Mad Men. He always reminds me of the guys in Mad Men, where all of them are like leaving their wives, taking up with their secretaries, doing all the classic sort of horror story things that growing up as a Gen Xer you knew or you saw or you experienced or you know someone who experienced. It's just that classic sort of I don't know, just a typical boomer story of you got better things to do than take care of this family you started. You started the family that you were supposed to.
I don't know. I see it as, you're right. He sees the family as equal to his other interests, but the family, they also have their myriad of interests, right? Mm-hmm. Like an endless supply of it. And like, they're not bringing anything to the table beyond that other than, well, I need stuff too, right? Like they're needy, but they're not
needy. They are needy.
But they're not bringing anything to the table to help him. So I related more to Royal in that.
I love that. I love that.
Because he's doing all the heavy lifting, and they're just like, pay attention to me, Daddy. Pay attention to me. Like, okay, Sure. I mean, he doesn't pay it, and look, he doesn't pay attention to them very much.
No,
But he has their best interest in mind, I think,
I,
ultimately.
Well,
I,
the key to this is they're all brilliant and they're all blossoming very early, and it's classic Wes Anderson, where all these young kids are doing things that adults should be doing. But once he's gone and the family dynamic is ruined, they all go to shit.
yeah.
All of them. They come back to this house like, we're all falling apart. One suicidal, one has a ruined marriage and sleeps around with anyone. The other one is lost his wife and he's having a mental breakdown. So all this fell apart because the family fell apart.
I guess I don't know. I always feel like I've never really discussed this. So this is the first time discussing this with people, but I feel like the kids are too old to keep blaming Royal. Like
True.
They're like these kids are in their early 30s, and the most Royal was neglectful.
Mm-hmm.
And he did say some mean spirited shit, like when Margot does that play at 11. He's like, I didn't find the characters relatable.
Yeah. This is my adopted daughter, Margot.
Yeah, there's just a bunch of kids. It's just a bunch of kids running around pretending to be, like this. I don't know what.
The whole thing is supposed to be like he just set up this dysfunctional situation. He takes the oldest son out to go gambling and roll dice in the street, while the other two are just like, "Where are you going, Dad?" Never got to do that.
Oh God, this is my adopted daughter, Margot Tenenbaum. Like every time, oh my God, I'm like, holy shit, this guy is just he could be like one of the more underrated characters of the past 25 years because he's just great.
Everyone swears that that's like one of the best performances of Gene Hackman. I got to agree. It was really good. After he got caught up in too many commercial movies in the 80s. This one was just like, oh, that's right. Gene Hackman is a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
And he can bring pathos to a character.
Yeah.
He's always been that way. I think that's why this is Wes Anderson's best movie. Hackman is so good just in general. And, look at his amazing track record.
Yep.
The French Connection, The Conversation.
The Conversation, yeah.
You got the Superman movies. He is so brilliant as Lex Luthor. I mean, he brings so much character. When he's in this movie, it feels real. So many actors, when they say lines, they don't feel like they're real. Like when you hear Gene Hackman talk in a movie, it's like it is the character,
I mean, it's a big thing that it was Gene Hackman and a 2001 Ben Stiller. I mean, right there is star power. Everyone else was sort of window dressing, even though they've all become really big names eventually. At the time, they weren't as big as you would think, except maybe
Gwyneth was the it girl. I think from the 90s. So I actually think this is her best performance that I've seen in just about anything. I love Danny Glover.
Yeah.
Danny Glover was, he was pretty big at that time.
But I mean, what he's doing is just so against type from what you see with like Lethal Weapon. And, I've never seen Danny Glover in a comedy before this. And he's hysterical.
Yeah.
He had great timing, kind of playing the straight man against everybody else.
He never once says, "I'm too old for this shit."
Nope, never one time. He could do it without it. It's just a great film. Hold on a second. We got some comments here. What's happening, man? We got Slasher Fred. He said this movie feels like a motion picture soap opera. Sure. Yeah. If you could do a soap opera in an hour and 45 minutes, I'd watch soap operas all the time. Is it melodrama?
No, I think it's comedy.
Dark comedy.
Yeah, because it's one bit on top of another, and the details make it funny.
Yes.
It's not adding more and more drama. it's just hilarious where Royal ends up at the end. There is a resolution to things, but at the same time, it's hilarious. He ends up as a doorman and he's poor, after being pretty well off through most of the movie, I think, or through most of his life. And you have
They
Ben
sold his
Stiller.
encyclopedias.
Huh?
They sold his encyclopedias.
Right. And then you got Ben Stiller and his sons and the tracksuits. I mean, there's just so many great bits in the film. It's definitely a comedy movie, but it's like a comedy soap opera. If you ever remember the TV show Soap, it has a similar feel to that.
Right. Wes Anderson's great at squeezing comedy out of horrible situations, where all his movies are themed around grief and depression and loss, and he just managed to squeeze the best jokes out of those three very dark places. He's great at it.
I think that, what's really wrong with the children, and maybe even to some extent what's wrong with Etheline, played by Anjelica Huston, it's just that everyone's heart has been broken. And they don't seem to be able to pull themselves out of it. And the ironic thing about it is that it ends up being Royal, by kicking this whole thing off by deciding he wants his family to love him again. I think they said nobody had spoken to him for 3 years. He's broke. He doesn't have any place to stay, so he concocts this idea to get his family back together again by pretending he has stomach cancer.
Again, how can you not be funny?
Like, that is a complete Royal Tenenbaum thing. But the funny thing is that he ends up putting everybody back together again.
Yeah.
He picks up right away on what's going on. He calls his kids out. And he's like, you're two-time, and he talks to Gwyneth, like, Margot, you're two-time in Raleigh with that asshole. He starts screaming at Ben Stiller, screaming at him. He's like, you're having a nervous breakdown. You haven't recovered since, your wife died. Yep. The only one that, is somewhat stable, and he ends up being the worst off, or at least, the least initially acting things out, is Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
Because, he's secretly in love with his adopted sister. And I love that scene when she gets off the bus.
Yes.
That slow motion scene when she gets off the Green Line bus and she's just got that weird fur coat on, but it's magic. It's magic to watch, man. It's very beautiful shots. Great cinematography in here. I mean, you're not looking at Avatar or anything like that. I mean, there are no special effects whatsoever, but it's a beautiful film visually.
There's so much nonverbal communication that goes on in his movies anyway. I was focusing on the introduction of the characters. Just by looking in the doorway of their bedrooms, you get a sense of who they are. You look into Ben Stiller's and it looks like an office. You look into Margot's, it's locked. There's a series of about a half a dozen locks on it, and keep out. And then you go up to Luke Wilson's bedroom, and it's all artistic. There's all that paintings on the wall. It's just characterization just by a sneak peek inside the doorway of their bedroom. It's fantastic the way he does it. All these details just snap into your head like that.
And I think Anderson respects the rule of comedy, which is, things have to build in a comedy, so it gets funnier and funnier. So you have to start low. And that's why I think he starts with all these sort of tragic things, because by having these very serious things, the comedy can then contrast and he can keep building on the bits. And it's more serious that way. I think the problem with some of his other movies is sometimes the setup is a little ridiculous, like the Grand Budapest Hotel and Asteroid City. He has these grandiose, crazy setups that when you build upon it, it isn't as funny because you've already started way up here and he has to go up here. But when you start down here, like, oh, I'm really depressed and, my dad and my mom are divorced and our lives are falling apart, then you really have places to go. and that's a rule of improv. And I think Anderson that's why this is really his best movie, because he starts that way, and it's very relatable to me.
Yeah, I think it's relatable to anybody who has a family. You whether you're pissed at somebody, or a brother, or a parent, or somebody, everybody's parents screwed them up a little bit, and then some people's parents screwed them up a lot. So I mean, if this is coming from Wes Anderson's own personal experiences through his parents' divorce, Hackman is saying, geez, this is a little close to home. And I remember when he was on Inside the Actors Studio, he talked about when he was very young that his father abandoned him. And I think at that point he was 60 years old on that old show, Inside the Actors Studio, and he actually started to tear up. So, these things have an impact that, never really leave. He's far from a child. He's, a world famous actor, but still greatly impacted by these things that happened when he was very small. Yeah, it probably is the most relatable. Although I love, The Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. I'm not going to be an oceanographer, or anything like that, or Budapest. Although I thought the last 5 minutes of that was fantastic, and anytime you get a chance to see F. Murray Abraham and Ralph Fiennes together at a movie, you're in for something. But yeah, this is probably the most grounded thing that I've seen him do so far. Or what was that one where they were on the train, the Pineapple Express?
Yeah. Darjeeling Express.
Darjeeling Express. All right, so there's that. But I mean,
that's the other thing is you notice from movie to movie to movie.
Uh-oh. He froze up.
Characters in his movies all have these wounds. They're all bandaged or casted up. That's very apparent in Darjeeling Express, because that's like a main character piece. But even in Rushmore and Royal Tenenbaums, people have bandages or missing a finger, or there's all these outward expressions of inner wounds that I just find hilarious. That they're all carrying these bandages.
Well, I think one of the damaged characters is Royal.
Mm-hmm.
He's been estranged from his family for it's not like it doesn't bother him. It's just I think by the time the movie starts, he's sort of been in this position where his wife doesn't speak to him, his 3 children don't speak to him, he's got 2 grandchildren he's never met before. So he's kind of damaged too, and
he's got this huge ego where it doesn't seem to bother him. Nothing gets him down. He just keeps going in his bumbling way, where everyone else around him who didn't do the sin are damaged.
Yeah, well, I mean, like there's that scene where Danny Glover sort of flushes him out from not having stomach cancer. Is that a Tic Tac? He's using Tic Tacs for the cancer medicine, but he leaves. They throw him out, and he looks at Ben Stiller and he goes, "Take it easy on those boys, Chazzy. I don't want this to happen to you."
Mm-hmm.
Like he's got self-awareness. He's sort of stoic. In that he just sort of shrugs everything off, but he realizes, in a sense that my son is like the cycles are starting to repeat now. And so, just with a little bit of intervention, it takes place over a very brief period of time, maybe a few weeks. The introduction of him again, becoming a father, maybe for the first time, and pointing some real, providing some real direction for them, straightens them out relatively quickly. Richie, not so much.
Yeah.
Richie is another character entirely, but.
That's what I like about Royal, though. That Royal is just, no matter what happens, he just keeps going.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like almost like a fake it till you make it sort of attitude. Like, well, I may not know what I'm doing, but I'll give him, I'll say things and do things anyway, and just keep going straight forward, even as he's broke and thrown out of the house.
So the oddest character is Eli, the neighbor, the friend, played by Owen Wilson. Right, where he sees this family, he sees how messed up they are, and still he does everything in his power to become part of this family. He's always trying to ingratiate himself since he was a little kid into this group of Tenenbaums, and he's not messed up in the same way. He's not brilliant. He's sort of faking it, but he's a hilarious character. He's always trying. He wants to go out with Margot just so he can get in with the family. He's hanging out with Richie. He's trying to ingratiate himself in the family. Weirdly enough, even though he can see clearly how dysfunctional this family is.
I think he sees the dysfunction, but he also sees that in their own way, they really are geniuses. Whether it's literary or whether it's financial, or Richie used to be a star tennis player, and it's just one of those things I think that stuck with him since he was a kid. And so, he just kept on through it. And clearly Richie had, what did you just say his name was?
Eli.
Eli Cash, he has his own problems.
One of the things about the kids being brilliant, though, if you've ever seen the X-Files episode, there's one about clones, and the idea behind the clones were they were all incredibly brilliant, but their incredible brilliance also brought about incredible mental problems.
Yeah.
Right. So the more brilliant you were, the more likely it was you'd have a mental problem that would be 10 times worse because you were so brilliant. And I think that's part of the dynamic that's happening in the Royal Tenenbaums. They are all very brilliant overachievers, but they also struggle with all these mental
insecurities.
That are much higher because of that. Especially Richie, because he was sort of famous.
If you ever meet people that are the tops in something, they're not exactly happy people.
No.
Right.
They're always miserable. They're always chasing, behind something, and they can never rest and they can never sit still, and it's not really an enviable position to be in. That's what I think why they say never meet your heroes.
Well, I knew a guy who wrote for Saturday Night Live, and he's if I told you his name, you'd know him as a famous stand-up comic. But when he was writing for Saturday Night Live, he felt like he was doing comedy wrong because they would always change his bits, and he wouldn't get to do what he really wanted to do, and he would go to the casino and blow his money, and he sometimes would get a little drunk and say, well, I don't really deserve it, that's why I keep blowing my money at AC. I mean, he didn't have a problem, but he felt almost guilty taking the SNL money.
A lot of insecurities, a lot of pressure. That's why they say sometimes it's better just to live a simple life. You don't want to get, I'd welcome the chance, with $500 million or something like that, that kind of thing, I'll take a swing.
But more money, more problems.
Yeah, you're probably right. And those guys that are worth hundreds of millions or billions, they work 7 days a week. They're Sundays, 12-hour days, every day is a 12 or 14, whatever, and it's just, it's kind of a miserable existence. So,
part of the problem is your overhead goes way up, right? You start living in nicer houses, you need better security, you need all these things, and things go up and up and up, and then you're way at this overhead, and now you have to do all these jobs to just sort of keep things going and make money, and you're making a ton of money, but you can never stop. That's why, I think a lot of these very old celebrities continue to work far beyond, the fans even wanting to see them. I mean, you look at a guy like Harrison Ford, who's reportedly worth, I think he's worth over $100 million or more. And it's just like, dude, how long are you going to work? Are you going to die on set? Like, the guy's in his 80s.
Right. But I mean, like, what is he supposed, like, I think people like that at the top, I think if they stop moving, they die. It's like a fish that stops swimming. Yeah, they can't not do it. There's like, what's he going to do? Just stop? He probably has no idea what to do if he's not acting. It's that kind of thing. It's the same thing for those guys that run these Fortune 500 companies or something like that. They're not just going to retire, and just, sit down somewhere or, go live somewhere nice. They don't know how to do that. They don't know how to relax. They don't know how to unwind. They have to be they're so ratcheted up and they're so tightly wound. If they sit down for more than 5 minutes, they'll probably have a nervous breakdown. So but that relates to, that's an interesting point with these characters. With the higher level of ability comes a corresponding neurosis. And I think Bill one time said
that was the word I was looking for. I was trying to think of neurosis.
Yeah, I think Bill said, there's correlation between creative and crazy, which is what we see a lot in Hollywood and, with musicians and, things like that. These people have this huge hole inside of them, and, that's where they get their ideas or inspiration for whatever it is that they're doing. But that can also be filled with a lot of negativity, whether it's addiction or, whatever bad shit that, people can fall into, these sorts of pitfalls.
And it's a vicious cycle too, right? If filling the void in your life drives your creativity, and then one day you make a bunch of money and you meet someone and you're having a good life, it may undermine your creativity and then undermine all the money that was coming in. And then now you fall apart because your career falls apart, but then the void returns and then your creativity returns. And I think that's a pattern in some of these A-listing, rock stars and celebrities.
Well, look
at the reason why they get hooked on drugs, because it gives them a problem that they have to overcome, and it drives the creativity.
It's possible. True. Well, I mean, look at Margot and Raleigh. Like Bill Murray's character in this is so unhappy because he's just in this loveless, listless, marriage with this woman who locks herself in she's like Sylvia Plath. She just locks herself in the bathroom for hours and stays in the tub, and she doesn't want to talk to him. And like, I'm stuck in the house with this person. Like, I can't leave. I live here. She lives here. That sort of, horrible melancholy is now contagious. And so, my whole house is fucking infected with this shit. And, I can't get any joy in life. I thought he played that really well. He's just a suffering in silence, kind of character because, he loves his wife. She's younger, and he doesn't know what to do with her. She's just not in a rational place.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought he really did a great job of this. It's a very small part. He's probably only in it for about 15 minutes. But I thought he was great in this. And then you've got Richie, in love with his sister and, ends up slicing his. That's another rough scene. And then not so much that even, but my two favorite scenes in this are Margot getting off the bus and then Margot and Richie in the tent. Where, they just sort of lay their cards on the table, this thing that, maybe you didn't know about, but it's been this way for forever. Fantastic filmmaking.
He's always telegraphing what's coming next, and he always pulls stuff in from the film before as well. There's that great scene where Gene Hackman's hanging out with the kids, and they're riding those go-karts, the same type of go-karts that he was riding in Rushmore. The tent is something that comes out in Moon Age Kingdom again. The the bellboy scene is something that plays out later in Grand Budapest. It's like he comes up with all these little details and then builds a whole story about those details next. He's always bringing in stuff from the previous film.
Yeah, and I like the payoffs. And that's what you really need in, well, not just a comedy, but any good film. You've got to constantly be revealing new information, and it's got to be surprising. It's got to come from weird angles. And by starting with all this great detail for all these characters, it gives you all this fodder to draw from. And then it all sort of comes together at the end. And that's what I really appreciate about it. Now, in his later films, I think he gets detailed just for detail's sake. It does, a lot of the details don't seem to come together, but
sometimes, yeah.
In the Royal Tenenbaums, I think for the most part, there's not a lot of fat there. Like all the details, or most of the details, are very important to what eventually happens by the end.
It's very odd to me that, you know, Royal's life, that's kind of been a train wreck, becomes a stabilizing force for his children. You know, like, I think Margot just wants somebody to listen to her, you know, where they have that scene where he's eating the ice cream, and like you find out like how classically neglectful he's been. Like, he doesn't even know her middle name, which is the same as his mother's name. You know, and like, it's funny, but it's so sad, like, at the same time, you know, and you get just a quick picture. It's like a 1 minute scene, but like just how big the gap is between him and his children, you know. You know, with Chaz, you know, that finally at the end, you know, where his son just breaks down. He's like, I've had a rough year, Dad. You know, he's like, I know, kid. I know, son. You know, that kind of thing. You know, they just need a little bit of boosting up, you know, and from the most unlikely person, even though he is their father, you know, talking to Richie about, you know, the fact that he's like, Margot Tenenbaum? You know, he's like, well, you know, well, what the hell? You know, everybody disapproves of everything this, you know, these days, you know, if it works for you, she's not legally, you know, your sister, you know, so on and so forth, you know. And I think that's all they really needed. You know, it wasn't, the damage wasn't nearly necessarily as bad as maybe they believed it to be, which is, you know, usually a classic thing. We usually think things are much worse than they actually are. You know, as you know, what's inside our mind really isn't what's happening on the outside world. I love the way that, you know, he was able to do that, you know, and just by being there, you know, just by being there and start to establish a connection again with his family. Like I said, I just think it's a beautiful film. And then, of course, you know, you get to the end of the film and he, you know, he passes away, you know, in time to have, you know, he saves his family. They don't become superstars, but they get back on the path to living again. You know, and that's an acceptable track. You know, so yeah.
Yeah, he redeems himself at the end by doing that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the unsung heroes of this movie is the editing, and because with the flashbacks in this, the great cuts to various scenes from the past really make the movie special, because you get that sense of history between the characters. And then when it cuts back to the modern day and when we get these resolutions, you feel like you've been there their whole lives.
Yeah. I have to say, one of the best things about this film was Alec Baldwin's narration. He's really good. I love the way that it just sort of put everything together. Like, where there's that scene where he talks about how Anjelica Huston has all of her children in the same house together for the first time in like 17 years. You know, and you're just like, wow, okay. Starts up, Royal Tenenbaum bought the house on 111 Archer Street. I just thought he did a fantastic. I don't know that he's done a lot of narration work, but I thought that, you know, he was kind of a character in this too. He is a great actor, maybe not the best person in the world, but I think a really solid actor and performer. And yeah, I liked him in this as well.
He's got a good voice for it too.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, it was really smooth and even. It was just the whole thing. Kept with the tone. All right. Is there anything about this film? I guess we've been going for about 45 minutes. Is there anything about this film that you would like to discuss that we have not covered?
The soundtrack. I guess it's we're hearing the soundtrack through Margot's Margot's perspective, because she is the Beatles fan. You keep seeing her with Beatles paraphernalia throughout the movie, and the movie just uses so many good Beatles songs done by other artists. Fantastic choices. That's one thing that Wes Anderson is never bad at, is the needle drop of great songs in his films.
I can't stand the Beatles. Never
Shocking.
can't stand them. I did love that the Stones are my band. I did love that in the tent scene. We got some good Stones tunes. We got a little Van Morrison. We got Nico, I think, is in there on one of the tracks. But yeah, never. It is a good soundtrack, but I'm just not a Beatles fan. Never really. Just one of those things. Anything for you, Tony?
I like the costuming in this movie, and that's weird for me to say because I'm not a big costuming guy. But the wardrobe really adds to the characters, I think. You know, each character has a very distinct look to them. And it's interesting to note, too, that Royals, he goes from the suit to the doorman costume or doorman uniform.
Right, and, same fabric, same cut.
Yeah, it's the same cut. It kind of looks almost exactly the same, except he's got, like, you know, the little epaulets or whatever they're called up on the shoulder. It really adds to the story. And I think that's kind of a lost art in a lot of movies today. You don't see that very often. You see these characters and they're just dressed in clothes, and you know, sometimes you confuse them because they look too similar. But all the characters in this had a very distinct look that fed into what their character was about. You know,
I very much liked the Pagoda character. He was in Rushmore. He was on when he almost gets run over by Bill Murray when Schwartzman cuts the brake line on his car. He stabs him with that little penknife. Son of a bitch! He gets him fired. I just thought that was funny too, so I like that character. All right, let's get to the part in the stream where we rate the film. This channel has a rating system that goes from 0 to 5 up by halves. So 0, 0.5, 1, 1.5, all the way to 5. So 0, for example, would be I'd rather kiss a rattlesnake than watch this movie again, all the way to 5, which is this is the journey, this is the destination, this is why I watch films in the first place. William Tenenbaum, what would you give Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums?
Well, I'd love to give it a 5, but I can't. Other than Darjeeling Limited, this is the movie that I watched the least, and I own the Criterion collection, and I can't remember the last time I put it into the player. So I'm going to give it a 4.5, only because it's got all the brilliant Wes Anderson stuff. I just think the plotting and the character, the plotting and the just the stories there's a little bit too much in there to be effective.
Shameful. All right, Tony G, what do you got for us?
Oh, I give it a 5. I think it's Wes Anderson's best movie. It's got everything. It's got an amazing cast. Everybody in it is a name that really has a lot of a big, long track record behind them of really good movies. You know, even someone like Danny Glover in this movie, he's such a good support. I mean, and Bill Murray, good supporting actors. They're big names themselves, and yet they're just there to support the rest of the cast. I mean, the movie has everything. It has comedy, there's sad parts, dramatic parts, and Gene Hackman is the guy to pull this together. I mean, he is just so brilliant in everything he does. So I'm just glad that he was in a movie like this late in his career. You know, I can't think of what he was in after that I would really point to as a high point for him. But
yeah,
you know, it's really just one of his best films, and I think the best Wes Anderson film to date.
I'm going to go with a 5. I gave Rushmore a 3. Just for reference sake, I thought this is by far a superior story.
It's so weird how a person who doesn't like movies is doing a movie podcast, Mike. It's just that weirds me out.
Well, you don't have to come back next week. I think it's just a superior story, and I think it's very grounded, like Tony was saying, and relatable. And when we talk about, like we talked about Schwartzman, and I didn't like Schwartzman's character, and you said, well, look at Royal Tenenbaum, but Schwartzman is not Hackman. Hackman is up there, at his own level. And it was great to see other real actors just go nose to nose with him. Even if it was Ben Stiller. Like, Ben Stiller is not as good an actor as Gene Hackman, but he seemed to lift everybody here. Mm-hmm. Now, with Anjelica Huston and Danny Glover, you don't have to do much. But a lot of these, Luke Wilson, I like Luke Wilson and Owen Wilson, but I mean, Hackman just seemed to lift everybody. Mm-hmm. And bring this into a completely different stratosphere. So you've just got a fantastic ensemble cast. I think you've got a story that is complex enough that it's relatable, and yet it touches on so many things. And yeah, I love it. It's my favorite Wes Anderson film. I haven't seen them all. I'm about to see French Dispatch for next week, so maybe I'll have a new favorite. And I haven't seen the one or two other ones that we talked about earlier on, so I've still got a little catching up to do. But of the ones that I've seen, yeah. And considering this came right on the heels of, Rushmore, levels above in terms of advancement and complexity, and pulling it off perfectly as far as I'm concerned. So I'm going with 5. All right, go ahead, Tony.
I was going to say, I think comparing it to Rushmore, I think the details in the Royal Tenenbaums is spread over many characters, whereas Rushmore, Jason Schwartzman has to do like 80% of the heavy lifting, and it's all put on his character. So I kind of get your criticism of it, but I still like the movie and his overachiever attitude. I just like characters like that.
I just wanted, I don't know. Yeah, I just didn't like it. I didn't like it. But, that's me. Now I own a copy of it. I bought like a $5 DVD of it. So I said, maybe in a year or so, I'll look at it again and pop it in there, knowing that we've had this discussion last week, and see if my opinion on it changes. But I'm in no rush right now. All right, William Tenenbaum, plug something.
I got nothing to plug. When I do, you'll be the first to know.
4.5 and nothing to plug. Good. Mm-hmm. All right, Tony G, what do you got for us?
I got book 19 of the Pineys. Available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. This one takes place in Ocean City, New Jersey in 1989.
Well, that is a scary time.
Yes. So it's a very 80s thing. I designed the back, the 80s sort of thing with the hot pink and the triangles and stuff. So, it's called Book 19, 89 Piney Buddy Movie. So it's kind of structured like a buddy movie from the 80s.
Okay. Tony, did you watch Stranger Things? Speaking of 80s, did you finish the series out? Did you watch it?
No, I watched the first season. Loved that first season. Watched the second season. Very confused with my head sideways. Yeah. Got to the premiere of the third season. I'm like, why the hell am I watching this? And
the only thing you really needed to watch was the first season and the fourth season. The fourth season was fucking phenomenal. And this one was it was really, really good. Even Robert Englund was in it. And then we get to the fifth season, which is, but it's the end of the series. So I was just wondering, speaking of being in the 80s, if you had happened to catch it. All right, for this channel, we will be wrapping up January next week with Wes Anderson. And this is going to be another first-time view of mine. we're going to get to The French Dispatch.
Mm-hmm.
Now, after that, for the month of February, we'll be moving on to a new director, and we'll be working with Stanley Kubrick. And I'm looking forward to several of those films because I haven't seen them. Directors like that, you get an opportunity, for me at least, to see some of these things for the first time. The month after that, we're going to get to the Coen brothers. And I might not pick all the obvious ones because I want to watch some new stuff. And nobody watches everything, so there's guaranteed to be things out there that, I'm seeing for the first time, or maybe somebody else on the panel is seeing for the first time. And that's part of the fun. So, Tony, I will send you the list. And then if you feel you want to jump in on something, just let me know. And you're always welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man. All right. That is it for this episode. My thanks to William Tenenbaum, also a brilliant genius. And my thanks to Tony DiGirolamo, author of The Pineys. We will see you all in the